All right, diving in. This time you've given us quite the reading list, huh? The top 10 best-selling books on a motivation, no less. So you're really trying to understand what makes people tick, like what gets us going and how to tap into that, right?
Definitely, it's a rich landscape. And
Yeah.
and I think what we're going to try and do is pull out those nuggets of wisdom, those action insights, and also see if there are any unexpected connections between all these influential thinkers. I mean, we've got habit formation, we've got mindset, pushing
It's
boundaries.
going to be a wild ride.
It is.
Okay, let's kick things off with James Clear and Atomic Habits.
You know, one of the big takeaways for me from that book was the whole idea of systems over goals. I'm curious, like in your own experience with trying to get things done, achieve things, do you find that focusing more on the process rather than just the end result? Like, does that actually work? Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's a really powerful distinction that Clear makes. It's easy to get caught up in this, in wanting to achieve a certain outcome, right? So let's say you're writing a book, for example.
Right.
That's the goal. But what Clear argues is that if you build a system, like a daily writing habit, you're more likely to reach that goal. Because it's not about this big, massive effort. It's about the small, consistent actions, day after day that actually move the needle.
That makes a lot of sense. And speaking of having a clear direction, Stephen Covey in The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, right? He really emphasizes beginning with the end in mind. Like having that vision of where you want to go.
Right.
So how does that fit in with what Clear is talking about with those daily habits?
I think they actually complement each other quite beautifully. Because Covey gives you the big picture. It's like having a compass, knowing your North Star. So you have that overall direction, you know where you're headed. And then Clear gives you the tools to actually make progress towards that destination through those small incremental steps, the atomic habits, right?
I see. So it's like Covey gives you the why and Clear gives you the how.
Exactly. And I think knowing the why, that end goal, actually makes those daily habits feel more meaningful, right? Because you can see how they're all contributing to something bigger.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so we've got these kind of, step-by-step approaches, right? But then you have someone like David Goggins with Can't Hurt Me,
Oh, yeah.
and he's coming at it from a completely different angle. Like he's all about pushing yourself to the absolute limit, embracing discomfort, to unlock your potential.
Yeah, Goggins is like a force of nature, right? He really highlights this incredible resilience that I think a lot of us have, but don't even realize. And his message is powerful because it challenges us to question those limits that we often set for ourselves, those perceived limits.
It's almost like he's saying like your mind is the biggest obstacle.
In many ways, yeah, it's that voice in your head that tells you you can't or you shouldn't. And Goggins is all about silencing that voice and proving it wrong.
Right, right. Now, Angela Duckworth with Grit, she brings this whole concept of passion and perseverance into the mix.
Right.
So it's about sticking with things over the long haul, right? What do you think in your experience? Like, do you see more success coming from like intense bursts of effort or that more steady, persistent approach?
I think both have their place, but grit to me highlights the importance of that sustained dedication over time. Intense effort can be great for those initial sprints for getting things off the ground,
Yeah.
but for real long-term achievement, I think it often comes down to consistency. It's that ability to stay interested, stay engaged, even when things get tough, even when the initial excitement fades.
Okay, and then we've got Daniel Pink with Drive. He really digs into intrinsic motivation.
Yeah, yeah.
And he talks about these 3 key elements, right? Autonomy, mastery, and purpose.
hmm
It's all about what truly motivates us from within, beyond just those external rewards, those carrots and sticks. Does this change how you think about what drives you?
It's a really important shift in perspective because Pink is saying when you have a sense of control over your work, that's autonomy, right? And you have an opportunity to get better at something, to master it, and you feel like you're contributing to something bigger than yourself, that sense of purpose, well, then motivation becomes less about external pressure and more about this internal drive, this genuine desire to do the work.
I like that. I like that. And finally, we have Carol Dweck's mindset. And this one really explores the difference between a fixed mindset, believing that your abilities are basically set in stone, and a growth mindset, believing that they can be developed.
Yeah.
And that's a pretty fundamental shift, isn't it? Like in how we see ourselves and our potential.
It is. And I think a growth mindset is incredibly empowering because it transforms challenges into opportunities.
Right.
It's not about being afraid of failure. It's about seeing failure as feedback, a chance to learn and grow. And that naturally fuels motivation because you're not so afraid of making mistakes. You're willing to keep trying, keep improving.
I like that. So we've looked at all these different perspectives on motivation. Are there any like common threads that you see running through all of them?
Well, I think one thing that really stands out is the emphasis on self-awareness,
Okay.
understanding your habits, your values, your mindset. It's like the first step towards getting motivated is knowing yourself, right?
Yeah.
And then another common theme is the idea that consistent effort in whatever form that takes, whether it's small habits or pushing your boundaries, is absolutely crucial.
Okay. Yeah.
And finally, I think there's this recognition that our beliefs, our mindset, the way we frame challenges, that plays a huge role in our motivation.
So it's not just about, setting goals or pushing ourselves. It's also about like how we think about those things.
Exactly. It's that inner game, that mental framework that really makes a difference.
So we've covered a lot in this deep dive.
We have.
You gave us quite a list of books to get through.
But hopefully this quick tour through some of the key ideas has sparked some thinking about what drives us, right?
Absolutely. So here's the final thought for you to chew on. With all these different perspectives on motivation, what's one small thing you might try in the next few days, or maybe a new way of thinking that you could adopt to kind of boost your own drive and maybe even go back and revisit some of those books that really resonated with you? Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
Thanks for having me.
It's been a pleasure.